continued for some 10 months of World War II until a new port was taken in Holland, the Red Ball Express. Generally African American troops. Incredible feat. And they ran from Arromanches. The reason they're running from Arromanches, by the way, and not from Omaha, pretty simple. On the 19th of June, there was a tremendous storm. Tremendous storm. It broke up the Mulberry Harbor. It was all hooked together. I might add that every third concrete block on the Mulberry Harbor, some of them you can still see today, the places had a .50 caliber machine gun mounted on because they knew the Germans were going to come and try to take it out with aircraft. Now they don't have much forward-based aircraft, as I said, but they did try on 3 different occasions to take it out unsuccessfully. They were driven off. But the storm of June 19 wrecked the Mulberry. It wrecked it at Arromanches, it wrecked it at Omaha. The one at Omaha, it wrecked so severely that it was never replaced. The one at Arromanches they were able to piece it back together, and that Red Ball Express, as I said before, continued, resupplied soldiers right up through the Battle of the Bulge in December. That's one of the reasons why Hitler is deciding to attack during the Battle of the Bulge, because the Allies had finally got another port. They finally got another port. Hitler's hoping to drive to the sea all the way to Antwerp. But up until that time, all resupplies came in. What are we talking about? Within 10 months, 2.5 million men land at the Mulberry Harbor, this artificial harbor, and are put into action. 2.5 million. And can you imagine the amount of supplies that they needed? 500,000 vehicles. 500,000 vehicles came in the Mulberry Harbor. 4 million tons, 2,000 pounds is a ton, right? 4 million tons of supplies came in the Mulberry Harbor. Probably as much as the assaults at Omaha, at Utah, at Gold Sword and Juno, the Mulberry Harbor helped win the Normandy campaign as much as anything. Next slide. I said that I mentioned Caen. And this is what happened to Caen. The only thing that remained in Caen intact, believe it or not, was the castle of William the Conqueror. Those of you that have been to Caen know what I'm talking about. It's right downtown. But even in that castle, you'll remember, those of you that have been there, you can see all kinds of bullet marks and things like that on the castle walls, because that was where the Germans made their last stand. That's where they actually had most of their wounded, and at the very end, that's where they stayed. The rest of Caen was totally destroyed. The churches that are there today that you see were put back together, literally. Much of the city, though, is new, and the reason it's new is because it was like that. Because once the attack happens on June 6th, in the subsequent weeks, fierce battle occurs through the first week of July into the second week of July, until the Germans finally moved back from Caen. So our sister city bore an incredible amount of fighting during that time period. Carpiquet Airport, just close by Caen, which was a scene of Canadian attack, took a tremendous blow also. And it's during that time period that Patton is entering the battle, and the Americans, though, to guard their flank, are moving back toward Cherbourg. Tony, could you put back that first slide with the map on it? Or I think it was the second slide. You might have to go way, way back. There we go.
You'll see way up there is Cherbourg, okay? There's 70,000 Germans there. So the Allies can't come forward and move toward Paris with 70,000 Germans in their rear. And so before they can make that big swing around, Patton is brought forward, and they go and they take Cherbourg. It's a very, very bitter fight. During this time, Montgomery is fighting it out in Caen, our sister city. And it's during this time that he's being sucked into, drawn into, actually, a very, very difficult battle. Not unlike the Battle of Stalingrad. Nobody wins because you have an advantage in a built-up area. That's a lesson learned even today, isn't it? Think about it. Fighting in a city is a very, very difficult thing in a built-up area. You don't have the advantages of maneuver, you don't have the advantages of tanks and things like that. And so when you get sucked in, why don't you just go around it? That's the question, and we haven't had that answer yet, okay? You could have just outflanked it, and the Germans would have had to withdraw. Because what happens is, when Patton does take Cherbourg, and the Americans start to sweep around, after taking Saint-Lô, which was bitter, and coming toward Caen, the Germans here decide, we can't stay there. We can't stay in Caen and fight anymore. And they move back. They move back to a place called Verrières Ridge, which becomes another difficult battle just on the other side of Caen. Now by this time, already by June 7th, some of the best German forces are involved in the fighting. The 12th SS Hitler Youth Division is in there. There is bitter fighting. There are atrocities that occur. Probably the most notable is at the Abbey Dardenne, okay, where Canadian prisoners are executed by some of Kurt Meyer's 12th SS Hitler Youth Division soldiers. And there are atrocities that occur on the Allied side too. When the Allies hear that those things are happening, there are very, very few prisoners taken on either side, I must say. Until Eisenhower actually and Montgomery issue an order, knock it off. We can't do that anymore, because that makes soldiers fight to the death. And so this cauldron called D-Day, this battle called D-Day, is a bitter battle. It's a battle with tremendous losses. The casualties, more than 10,000 killed and wounded, more than 2,500 actually killed. But listen to this. This is what we oftentimes forget. 15 to 20,000 French civilians were killed during the Normandy campaign. 15 to 20,000 French civilians. The same French civilians that were welcoming the Allies sacrificed an incredible amount of people. If you're in Caen, if you go to the castle of William the Conqueror, there is a marker there to the unknown civilian casualty of Caen, okay, who's buried there. And I recommend that if you go to Caen, you see that. And it represents the tremendous losses that the French take. And why do they take those tremendous losses that don't occur in the First World War from a civilian standpoint? Easy. Because nobody could tell them to leave, if you know what I mean. Because if they told them to leave, if the Allies had dropped leaflets, hey, you better get out of here, the Germans would probably know, I wonder why they're telling them to leave. And so the attacks occur and they're caught up in that attack. So 15 to 20,000 civilians are killed. 10,000 Germans are killed during this campaign. And the war at this time becomes so bitterly contested psychologically with the Germans too. Once, as Rommel indicated, if the Allies gain a foothold, if the Allies get ashore, we have lost the war. He was one of the few that could tell Hitler that. His former superior, Guderian, Heinz Guderian, also, at one time in a conference that the Germans were having, and Guderian was there, and he was one of the few that would speak his mind to Hitler. Hitler threw up his hands and said, well, what should we do then? You know what we should do?
And Guderian's response wasn't very well taken by Hitler. In fact, he was told to leave the room after he said it. He said, "Make peace, you fools." Okay? And because he knew that once the Americans, British, and Canadians had achieved that, which they had achieved on D-Day, when they had got ashore, and they would continue to come in great numbers with great supplies. It was at this time, too, that Stalin, who had been calling for a second front for more than 2.5 years, okay, was finally satisfied. Because up to this point, believe it or not, Stalin did not trust anyone. Remember how I said you can never trust people that don't trust? Stalin did not trust anybody. And he thought the Allies were in cahoots with the Germans. And delaying the attack and delaying the attack, and while the Russians were being bled. Because remember, 2/3 of the German forces are on the Russian front. It isn't until that D-Day invasion occurs. And so D-Day means what? It means eventual victory. It doesn't mean they're going to have a victory, but it means eventual victory is going to happen. So on the 70th anniversary of D-Day, I think it's important that all of us remember the sacrifices of those soldiers